March 28th, 1984. Joe Todd, an interview with J.D. Bell. And your superintendent of Beaver.
Park manager.
Park manager. Okay. Mr. Bell, where were you born?
I was born in Octavia, Oklahoma.
Octavia. When's your birthday?
April 18th, 1921.
1921. Who is your father?
Robert L. Bell, or L. Bell.
And who is your mother?
Hattie Bell. Her maiden name was Maggard.
Were they both from Oklahoma?
Mother's from Kentucky. My mother moved from Kentucky to Oklahoma, and I think they moved to Oklahoma about 1906, 1907.
What about your father?
Smithville. My father's from Arkansas, Tennessee to Arkansas, because I think he was born in Tennessee and then to Arkansas.
What kind of work did he do, your father?
He was, well, when we first moved to LaFleur County, stayed in LaFleur County a while, and then to McCurtain County. He was fireman for, well, he fired some, I believe, for the Choctaw, when it was Choctaw Lumber Company. It was famed for Choctaw Lumber Company. And then he fired, he was a fireman for gins, cotton gins. He did some of that in Smithville and in Tallahassee.
Where'd you start school?
Where did I start school? Started first at Octavia School, and then went to Big Cedar. I went to Big Cedar School. I was there for a short time. I can't remember. Just real small.
Okay.
Finished school after we moved to Tallahassee. We later moved to Tallahassee and finished school at Tallahassee.
What year did you graduate?
I didn't graduate. I went to CCC camp. I finished my high school work night class in CCC camp at Stap.
Okay. Where at?
I lost Stap, Oklahoma.
Stap.
It's CCC camp.
Okay. How come you went to CCC?
Lost my father in 1936. Of course, that was during the Depression. Had to take out of school. We had some livestock. We had quite a few cattle, and he raised, just before he died, he was raising mule colts. He was raising and selling mule colts. And we had a pretty good sized farm at the time. And time was pretty rough during that time. And I went in to the CCC camp. Because, at the time we went in, they gave us $5 a month and sent $25 to our parents, and that $25 was a gold mine to my mother during the time. Right. I don't know what we'd have done without it.
What did you do in CCC?
First started out as a cook for a while in the CCC camp, and then went from there to work for the doctor in what we call the infirmary. It was a first aid station. Worked for a few weeks there, and then I went in as a towerman. I was a towerman on Sycamore Tower, I guess probably about 18 months of the time I was on the tower, Sycamore Tower.
How was the CCC organized? Who was head of the camp?
We had a military commander that was head of the camp, and then we had a forestry superintendent who was employed by the state forestry, and our superintendent of the forestry division was Charlie Cook. One of our commanders was can't think of his first name. His last name was Lightfoot. He's Lieutenant Lightfoot. And there was another one that was J.D. Carmichael from evening.
Okay.
And they were military, of course, and then of course the only ones we had the forestry. We did forestry work, and a lot of people did soil work and built ponds and such that, but we did forestry work, fighting fires and
Okay, just fighting fires
working
and.
towers, building
Okay.
roads.
Okay. What were your duties in the tower? Sycamore Tower.
Just watching for fires. There was we trained under Charlie Womack, who was employed by the federal, by the National Forest. And after we got our training there, then of course we went on the tower, and that was for the CCC camp. I guess it was through the forestry division. But we stayed on the tower. There was two people in the tower I was on. Was me and Efton Morgan, and Efton Morgan I guess is still in Tallahassee. We was on 5 days and then we go home 5 days. We just switch off, one man at a time on the tower. And we just stay on the tower, make our reports, make weather reports, the conditions, and mostly watch for fires and report the fires.
Okay, you were on 5 days?
Yes,
Not
5 days and off 5 days.
Okay, how long was the shift?
24-hour shift. We was on call 24 hours. We had to go on. It depended on the fire danger whether we had to go up and check. We had to make checks all through the day and the night.
Was there someone in the tower at all times?
No.
No. Okay.
All day. We was up there all day in the tower when they was burning index was high. We had to stay up there all day, and then we had to make checks through the night. Sometimes 2 hours, sometimes an hour, and sometimes 2 hours, and sometimes we didn't have to report on it, not every 4 hours. We had to take
Now,
pretty close watch.
Was there a house at the
Little
by the
cabin,
tower?
little cabin
Okay.
there by the tower. Yeah.
So you out there by yourself?
Up there by ourselves. When we go on, they had usually the trucks. If we went home, a lot of times we didn't have to go through the CCC camp. At the time I was on, we lived at Tallahassee, but the truck would come up at each change. They would bring their groceries up, furnish their groceries. We did our own cooking in the cabin, had a place to cook in. An old oil burning stove, kerosene stove, and they furnished their groceries in a little cooler. We had a cooler outside the cabin. We couldn't keep anything. We didn't have ice. We couldn't keep anything. We just had a little screen box on the outside of the window. Kept it in the shade, and that's where we kept our food. Mostly canned food.
How tall is that tower from the base to the top?
That one was I believe it's 110 foot tower.
If you spotted smoke, what'd you do?
The time I was up there, we didn't have radios, it was just telephone. If we spotted smoke in an area, there was 3 of us. There was Sycamore Tower, and there was Kamish Tower, which was that was National Forest. Harrison Ashby was on that one. And then we had the Winding Stair Tower. If it was in the area with those 3, we had these rangefinders, and we had the big map on the wall. We'd pull our strings across, and across the string each one would get a bearing on the fire. Then we'd go to our table, the old table mount rangefinder, and we would sight the fire. And then when we cross those strings, the location, each man's location, or the one that reported the fire, we could pinpoint the fire where it was. And we'd call back the CCC camp, and of course they'd get a hold of the crew of CCC boys and go and put the fire out and work on it. I can't think, John can tell you, I can't think the name of the instrument, what we call it. We call them rangefinders, but there's another name. It's just a big table.
Yeah.
And it had a string across that table, and you go, and the map, where you crossed, where you sight the fire, you get your number on the outside of that table, you get the number on that table, and then you call it the other tower, and all 3 of us would get together, and where your strings would cross on the map, we'd put a pin on there, get the range, section, and township, and call it in. It's in trouble.
Okay. How long did you work for CCC?
2 years.
2 years.
It's a 2-year limit. I stayed the full 2 years.
Okay. What'd you do then?
Went from there to West Coast. Started to work for civil service. And I worked for civil service for 18 years.
What about World War II?
I was in service a short time in World War II. When I went in 1943, November 43, and I was injured in training. I did go overseas. I was in 11 months. It's a little under a year. And put me out on disability. I was in service.
What'd you do for civil service?
First started out sheet metal, working in sheet metal repair for the Air Force. Well, it was the Air Corps then, and later, of course, it was the Air Force. Then I went from there to aircraft instruments, and I worked aircraft instruments about the last 12 years I was in.
Okay. Was that in the West Coast all the time?
No, the West Coast, and transferred back to Tinkerfield. Last 6 years I was at Tinkerfield.
And when did you retire from?
1962.
62.
Then I went to work for the Parks Department. Latter part of 63. Night watching. I just started out night watching. We didn't started work for the park. We didn't have rangers. We just had. They just put us in a truck and put us out there on our own. And worked for Herb Goddard was superintendent when I went to work. And just mostly buffer way through. We didn't have rangers at the time. Just get out there and try to. Most of public relations, we didn't have a whole lot of problem when I first went to work here. Started work. They called it part-time, but I put in from anywhere from 10 to 12 hours a day when I first started working in the park here.
When did they organize the park rangers?
Let me check and see. I won't be sure.
Okay.
Exactly. It's 1975.
1975.
Yeah.
How come they didn't have park rangers before 75?
Well, the department had just never felt like there was a need for rangers until they started having some problems, so much vandalism. Vandalism just kept getting worse and worse all the time. And we had a young man that come into the department and took over the ranger program. Trying to think of his name. Ken. I can't think of his first name now. Anyway, he organized the ranger program. They went to training. They had to go and qualify, just same as any other law enforcement officer, like a sheriff's department, highway patrol, city police. They had to go and qualify on the range.
Okay. What are the duties of the park ranger?
They patrol the park, and they work nights, work thieves. Now, some places they work in daytime, but here I have two, and they work nights, checking, watching for poachers, speeding, illegal vehicles like your trail bikes, your mini bikes. It has to be roadworthy. Mostly public relations, and they collect the fees from the campers in the park. So collect fees.
Now, are they have the authority of a sheriff's deputy or what?
In their area, which would be the park rangers here, they have the same authority in this park as a trooper has on the highway, or a policeman has in the city, or a sheriff has in the county.
Okay.
for that area. They have the same. They can make arrests in the same authority as they do. But that's in this area for this park.
Yeah. How long you been at Beaver's Bend?
20 years, the 15th of last February. I went from the park. Well, we called it night watchman. They didn't call it rangers when I first started work. Then when the lake area opened up, Broken Bow Lake, I was promoted to supervisor, and I was in charge of the lake areas. Under Herb Goddard. Herb Goddard was superintendent, and I was supervisor under him. But I was in charge of the lake areas, helped lay out all those campgrounds over there after the Corps turned it over to the state. I helped lay out all those campgrounds in that area, helped lay out the golf course, the road to the golf course, and of course later I was promoted to assistant park superintendent. And then that park superintendent left, and I was put in as park superintendent. And then later on, we had a new program. It depends on what size facility someone's got promoted. And then this facility here was big enough that it went to a park manager, which was a promotion over, was a higher promotion than a park superintendent. And I went to park manager. But I've been in supervision in the park for approximately 12 years. By the time I've been here.
Okay. I'd like to get more information on who was the state director of CCC?
I just can't remember who the director was at that time on CCC.
Was it,
I sure can't.
was CCC a part of WPA, or was it a separate program?
It was, the money was, it came from the same as the WPA. But this was young men. I could, they were, had to meet about the same qualifications in the CCC as the WPA did in the WPA. You had to be needy, you had to be people like was on the farm, and the drought had got them, which in a lot of cases they had a lot of people that feed stuff, would burn up. The drought was real bad. And of course, at that time, I had lost my dad, and we needed, of course, it was hard for me to go ahead and do the work on the farm no more than we were selling and no more than we were growing our feed stuff. We had a problem with the feed stuff. We had to feed our livestock. I'll tell you, that $25 a month just about did it. And we had a few. We had some cattle we could sell at the time. We had some livestock we could sell, saddle horses and such as that. Dad raised a few saddle horses, but it was pretty rough. And of course, I couldn't go to school and do that too. And I wanted to finish my education, which I did. That was about the best experience, I think, for a young man during that time. You really, discipline was one of the main things in there. And if you didn't have an education, you had to go to school at night. They had several things. You could take your regular schooling. They also had a program for teaching welding, manual training, which is woodwork. They had typing courses. You could take typing. I took that, but it was one of the best things, I believe, that I had ever found. And then when we went into the training on the fire tower, I could have stayed with that and went to the federal government. I didn't know at the time, with the National Forest, was offered that job, but I didn't realize, just being a young man at the time, what it meant to me to go ahead and take that job. Of course, I'd heard about the good paying jobs on the West Coast, and I felt like a lot of the other young men, young at the time, couldn't anybody tell me anything. I had to find out for myself. I found out that wasn't quite what I wanted when I went out there. So I did go into aircraft work, and then went into service, and then came back. It was in civil service, and after I came out of service, I finally after I kind of got straightened out, I finally got back on, just went in and picked up on civil service and stayed with that while I was in until I retired. Good program. We learned a lot. We worked with equipment, learned to operate a bulldozer, truck driving. They had driving courses on trucks where you can get your shoulder license. It was a very good training program.
What was your average day in a CCC camp? What time would you get up?
We'd get up, the ones that worked in the field, of course, when I was cooking, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. Get up 4 o'clock in the morning, and then we'd get off about 3 in the afternoon. Change shifts in the afternoon. But the people that work in the field, fighting fire, working on roads and such as that, it was, we worked 8 hours. It was an 8-hour day, unless there was a fire. Now, there's times where we went out to fight fires. We was out there for several days. We'd just stay out there and fight fire until we get a new crew, and there'd be a new crew come out, and we'd change and go back. We stayed out there, brought our meals to us while we was out in the field fighting fire. And that was those old 5-gallon backpacks we were carrying in. Rakes and shovels. Same way on fire trails.
Well,
Met some good people, interesting people. I wish I knew there was, when we was on, working on that fire trail, which is the Skyline Drive now. Some place over there was an old hermit lived in there, and that area is probably still there. He made his living digging ginseng. You know what ginseng is. He worked Rich Mountain. On Rich Mountain, they come in, and he just had a bunch of burros. He didn't have that own transportation he had. He said he'd go to Mina once every 6 months and get enough supplies to last him back and forth. We'd go by in those old CCC trucks, and he'd be out there when we come by, and we'd give him oranges and apples and things that he didn't have, such as that. He was very interesting to talk to, but you didn't go inside that rock fence. He had his rock fence built out of rock, no wire. He'd stacked up rock completely around, had about 4 or 5 acres there, and a bunch of goats and burros. But after we got to know him, he was real interesting to talk to.
That was up where, on the Skyline Drive?
Yeah, it was on someplace west of, east of where 259 goes through. It was on the east side, somewhere between there and Rich Mountain, the Talamina Drive. I've always wanted to go back and see if I could locate that, but we just never had a chance to go in there. He'd been there for years. He had quite a story to tell.
Well, I think that's about it. You ever thought of having a reunion here of all the guys in CCC camp?
Oh, by the way, we have CC reunion here at Group Camp 1 every year. They're pretty good. They had, I believe they had about 160. There's still a lot of the old CCC boys.
My father's in CCC camp.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where was he stationed?
He first did some work at Osage Hill State Park.
Oh, I see.
I'm from Bartlesville originally.
Yeah.
Then they shipped him up to South Dakota, and he worked up in the Black Hills.
That was That was soil conservation, I guess.
Well, he did work in the forest up there.
Was it forestry there
Yep.
too?
Yep.
I see.
Cause they built roads, and he was up there when they were building Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
And they built roads to the Black Hills, and about the same thing he did down here. And but he just did very little work here in Oklahoma. Then they shipped him to South Dakota.
I got to stay in Oklahoma. I was a Stap.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you know where Stap is?
No, not really.
You know where the Hodgins, what they call Hodgins, the correction center?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, now that where the correction center is where the Stap CCC camp was.
Okay. Oh, I was going to ask you. Did you live in a barracks environment? Did you live in the barracks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just open bays?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We lived in barracks. While I was there in the camp, of course, after we went to the tower, we had our own little cabin there, but we lived in barracks.
Okay.
You had to stay in the barracks.
Did you have to build the barracks? Were they already built when you got
The
there?
barracks were already built when I went in.
Okay. How many men were in the camp at Stap?
Let's see, I think we had 100 and... the barracks in the camp, so we had about 180 men.
Okay. Well, I think that's all the information I was looking for. Oh, where'd they get the name Octavia?
Octavia was named from someone tell you it was named from Indian princess, but it wasn't. That's a French name. I don't really know, but it was a French name, and it seemed like it was from well, I don't know. I can't tell you I can't be exactly sure. There's been several.
Okay.
But it was some trappers. Some lady, I believe, was some trappers that had moved in. I can't be sure. You need to look that up. But it's interesting the way it's got its name.
Right.
I believe it was from trappers. A lot of them tell you it was from Indian princess, but it wasn't. It's a French. Octavia is a French name.
Okay. Well, I think that's everything. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, I didn't tell you that when I lived in McCurtain County, we moved on my granddad's homestead.
Mm-hmm.
He homesteaded a place right in the corner where Eagle Fork runs into Mountain Fork River.
Yeah.
And we lived there for quite some time, right there where Mountain Fork runs into Eagle Fork in McCurtain County.
Okay. How far is that from here?
It's about 40 miles.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to ask, when did they first organize Beaver's Bend State Park?
You mean as a state park or
Yeah.
a CCC? Now this at one time was a CCC camp.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the CCC camp was here. The land was donated to the state. I don't remember where that was from. CCC camp was here or not. By Uncle Beavers. The story on this book that John has up here on the book. Anyway, it was donated by Uncle Beavers. Become state park, I believe.
Planning and Resources. It was Department of Interior.
Mm-hmm.
Let's change names a dozen times.
Yeah.